So our second section today is going to cover some Vissim example models that we created as part of drive-through testing procedures. I'm sure that all of you have been watching the news and see a lot of these similar news stories popping up everywhere where drive-through testing is becoming more and more common. So we just wanted to take an opportunity to create a few different models that could be used to kind of look at the different operations for drive-through testing. So we've created two examples here. The first one is going to be occurring along the state border on a freeway. And then the second option will be looking at testing facility in a local park and ride facility. So our first one here, the state border, we're just taking a look at along Virginia and North Carolina along I-95. And for this example, we're actually going to utilize the rest area at both of the state borders as a location to perform this testing. So on the northbound side, we'll take a look at the Virginia rest area, and then on the southbound side, we're going to look at the North Carolina side. All right, so here's a close-up of the rest area located in Virginia. And then here's a look at the Vissim network. So this network is kind of broken up into three different areas. First, we have kind of this initial screening area that will take place for both cars and trucks. From there, if vehicles need additional testing, they will then exit the freeway and come into the rest area location. Cars will get checked again in this car parking area, and then trucks will go to the truck area for additional testing. And so now we're just going to take a look at all of the different elements that were required in building up this model. And so you'll see a lot of information here on the slides, but we kind of wanted to write everything out so that you all can use this as a reference after the fact if you want to go and download those example files and use them, or take a look at some of the formulas or user-defined attributes and use those in your models as well. So in this case, we're going to have all of the vehicles entering the network, and we've created a couple of different vehicle types. So some will be considered to be testing not needed, and some will have testing needed. And so we have both of these for both cars and trucks. And so as vehicles enter the network, they'll pick up a routing decision to go to that initial screening area. And then they will pick up this vehicle attribute decision. In this case, we created a user-defined attribute here called testing status. And so in this case, based on the vehicle type, that testing status will be set to 1 if a vehicle needs to have further testing. And this will allow us to be able to route vehicles and have the vehicles make decisions along their way. So if we take a look at the initial screening area, all of the cars are going to travel over this connector here on the left-hand side, and all of the trucks will travel over the connector here on the right-hand side. So we always kind of want those trucks to use that rightmost lane. And as the vehicles enter this initial screening area, they'll go ahead and stop at this stop sign here. And this has a dwell time distribution set up for that initial screening. And then vehicles will pick up another routing decision to either continue on the freeway or to go into the testing area. So if vehicles need additional testing, they will be sent from that routing decision down here to the test site. If they do not need additional screening, then they can continue on down the freeway. One other check that occurs in this routing decision with a formula is a check to see if the testing area is full. So if the area is completely full and there's no additional space for vehicles, then vehicles can also continue on the freeway. So those vehicles will not be able to get tested. So as vehicles go in and enter kind of this first rest area, so we'll first talk about the car testing site. So they will enter in, and they will come upon this first routing decision here. And this routing decision we'll take a look at the vehicles located within this testing space, so located on each of these lanes. And if this is full, then vehicles will end up bypassing this and continue back onto the freeway. However, if there is space available, then vehicles will take this connector and be assigned to the first available spot. So as vehicles are entering, you'll see here on each, right before each kind of entry point here, we have another routing decision. And so this routing decision takes a look at the occupancy on this connector. And if the connector is occupied, a vehicle will continue on to the next connector, check again, and if it's occupied, it will keep continuing on until it comes to the first available one. And each of these connectors have another stop sign associated with them with a dwell time. And then they also have a vehicle attribute decision, which will update once the vehicle has completed testing. And so it'll kind of have a testing completed attribute at that point. And then we also have some data collection points placed so that we can count the number of vehicles that have been tested. And then very similar for the trucks, so they will come and enter in this facility. They will also do the same kind of check where they're going to look for availability at each space. And they have also the same kind of setup where they have a stop sign with a dwell time and then some vehicle attribute decisions placed so that we can say, okay, this truck has been tested. All right, now we're going to take a look at the North Carolina side. So in this case, this area is a little bit bigger, so we had some more space to work with. So instead of doing that initial screening on the freeway, in this case, vehicles will do the initial screening in the rest area itself. So trucks will come kind of to the lower side here, and they will be screened initially and then can go to their parking area, while the cars will go to their own screening area, and then they have two different sections that they can go to for testing. So the setup on the North Carolina side is pretty much the same. So these are the southbound vehicles. The vehicle types will be placed onto the network, and their attribute decision will be updated based on whether they need testing or not. And then all of the vehicles will pick up a route and will travel directly into the rest area. From there, they'll pick up another routing decision, whether they're a car or a truck. And the trucks will get sent down to the truck testing center, and they will perform their initial screening here with just a single stop sign that has another normal distribution applied to it. Those trucks will then pick up a routing decision to enter into the facility if there is availability, if they do need additional testing. Otherwise, if the center is full or if they don't need testing, then they can continue on and go back onto the freeway. And so here's kind of a look at the truck testing center. So as the trucks enter, they will do the same thing where they just go to the first available space based on the occupancy set up in the routing decision formulas. And then again, they have kind of that stop sign and the final vehicle attribute decision and data collection points set down on those connectors. And then on the car side, so we have 3 separate lanes for the cars to complete that initial testing. And so this is going to use a routing decision here, which uses the modulo function. So essentially, we have a data collection point here counting vehicles. And we'll take that count and divide it by the number of lanes, which in this case is 3. And then based on the remainder, we'll assign the vehicles to a specific lane. So this will just allow the first vehicle to come in on the left side lane, and then the next vehicle will come down the middle, and then the next vehicle will go on the right lane. And so this will just allow kind of that sequential assignment to occur. And then once they have exited that initial testing facility, they'll then pick up another routing decision, either to enter the secondary testing facility if additional testing is needed and there's availability. Otherwise, they will continue on and be placed back onto the freeway. All right, and so here's just an overall look at the full cars facility center. And you can see the cars have kind of an additional section up here at the top if this first one is full. So they have kind of this full area to utilize. So let me go ahead and pull up that example here. So I've started to run this model already. So I'll go take a look at the Virginia side again. And you can see already here we have some vehicles lining up at the initial site. And you'll see all the trucks here are going to stay in that right lane, and the cars will utilize the other two lanes. And then we also have some coloring based on whether the vehicle needs to be tested or if it does not need to be tested. So you'll see here some of the red vehicles will enter in to go to the testing site. You'll also notice that some vehicles end up continuing on the freeway, and that's just because this area is already full. And so in this case, we're doing a lot of counting with data collection points. So you'll also see there's quite a few of these placed in here, just so that we can count vehicles as they're entering and leaving. And then we can have counts as to how many vehicles got tested as well. And then you can also see here we've got the truck section up here at the top. And as the trucks enter, they will just go to the first available space. And then very similar setup with the North Carolina side. In this case, you'll see everybody will be leaving the freeway and entering in here. Here we've kind of got that sequential assignment for the cars as they're entering. So they'll each be assigned to one of these lanes. And then they can go to the additional testing site down here. All right, so now let's take a look at the second example. So in this case, we're just using a park and ride facility. And here's what it looks like here in Vissim. So we have all the vehicles will enter the area and go to this initial screening area. If vehicles don't need to be tested, they can then go ahead and exit. Otherwise, the trucks will be sent to the truck area, and the cars will go down to an initial waiting or queuing area where they can sit and wait. And then from there, they can go into the secondary testing area. So in this case, we're going to send all the vehicles here to the initial testing site. Again, we're going to use kind of that sequential vehicle assignment. So we're going to assign vehicles kind of going back and forth between each of these lanes. Then they can stop down here at these stop signs. There'll be a dwell time associated with them. And in this case, they'll pick up whether they need testing or not with a vehicle attribute decision. So in this case, we don't have different vehicle types defined. So all of the testing status will kind of be set with these vehicle attribute decisions. And this is just set up with a 20% rejection rate currently. And so as the cars that need testing enter the model, they will kind of come down here into the waiting area. And so these will also be assigned sequentially using that modulo function. So we have a data collection point set up here to count the vehicles, and then we divide that by 6 in this case, since we have 6 different lanes. So as the vehicles enter, the first one will come here, and then the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. Then it will start back at 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And so as vehicles enter this facility, we then stop them down here at the bottom using signal heads. And so this is just using one of the newer signal types. So we just used a railroad crossing signal head just so that we could create some signal groups. And that way we didn't need any external signal controller files. And then from there, we actually have a short little comm script set up that controls when those signal heads turn on. And so that was written in Python. And essentially what happens is once the vehicles have kind of cleared this like main link and gotten to the secondary testing area, the vehicles, the signal head will then be turned on and allow the vehicles to go to that secondary area. And those vehicles will be serviced based on the order that they entered the waiting area. So then for the cars, this is the secondary area here. So again, we'll pick up a routing decision to go to one of the aisles and then fill in kind of that first available space. And each of these has a stop sign associated with it with a dwell time to account for that secondary test. And then very similar setup for the trucks. They don't have a separate queuing area, so they'll just enter the truck facility and they will go to that first available spot. So let me go ahead and pull up that model here. So in this case, the vehicles are going to be colored blue if they do not need testing, and then they will be turned red if testing is needed. So you'll see they will change colors once they kind of hit that vehicle attribute decision here. And so any of the red vehicles will come down here to the lower section, and you'll see the vehicles will get assigned to one of these lanes. And then as soon as the vehicle kind of leaves this exit lane, you'll notice that the next appropriate signal head in order will turn green to allow the vehicles to continue on and go to that secondary testing area. And then all of the trucks just kind of go and follow along to each of those. And most of these routing decisions have formulas associated with them. And so a lot of the times we're going to use these table lookups. So I just wanted to pull this up really quick to do a quick explanation. But essentially the table lookup allows you to pull information from a specific object. So in this case for the routes, to do this assignment, we're kind of looking at whether this connector is occupied. So in this case, we're using the table lookup. The first value here is just going to create a variable name, essentially. So in this case, it's just L. And then the second value here that we enter is going to be the actual object we want to reference. So in this case, we're going to look at link number 10619, which will be this connector here. And then we're going to take a look at the number of vehicles on that particular link. So this is then wrapped in an if statement. So essentially, if there is a vehicle on this connector, then we're going to say, okay, don't take this route and continue on. Otherwise, this route can be selected. So you'll see a lot of these routes have very similar table lookups. So they're usually looking at either links or at data collection points, just looking for like number of vehicles. All right.